Hello, and welcome to this presentation on the art vision of Tides of Revival. So I did a game design vision about a month back, I guess, which took me like a month to prepare, and this one I've thrown together in like 3 days. So the quality is thereafter, maybe, but hopefully it'll be maybe interesting or yeah, uh, you know. Anyways, we'll see. I had it's basically two parts or maybe three parts, and we're gonna start with like the just a fun thing, which is I'm just gonna try to show you what I think is the you know what I actually want visually from the game, right? Um, and yes, I am very much not an art director. I have a feeling there are like if any of my previous colleagues would see me do like a art vision presentation, they would think I'm on crack or something. But here we are. So yeah, this is like just the first draft of this, and this is something that we can all discuss and work on during the course of the development of the game. But it's just my take on what I want and what I think is like a good fit for Tides of Revival. Um, so like yeah, like there's a bunch of like art stuff that I just don't know, like vocabulary and concepts and all manner of things. So this is amateur hour, but let's go. So I've come up with some guidelines, and I'll go deeper into them in just a minute. But let's just start. So first of all, I want believable materials, proportions, angles, and animations, and that just means that uh, none of these have to be like super detailed or anything. It's mostly that they shouldn't be like over exaggerated or sort of too subtle or too stylistic or too weird, or you know it should just feel like it shouldn't feel like you're um, sort of in the game and you see this art style and you feel like, well, this is a really nice art style. You should feel like this is a nice world, right? And that's the intent, that you should feel like you're in this world and not just in a game that has like a nice art style, if that makes sense. Um, I like some vivid colors because I think a lot of modern games, not all of them, of course, but it's not uncommon for modern games to be sort of muted and desaturated and gray and brown or whatever. And I would like to, maybe not go like to the extreme all the time, but for a lot of vivid colors. And I think verticality is just, is cool, and I think that's going to do a lot for the visuals as well, just to have that always in mind. Yeah, and then I have some more things that I think would be nice, but maybe not core. I mean, these are sort of floating, but yeah. So yeah, lights. I want lights. I think that lights are cool, and it's gonna look really pretty if we have a lot of lights. So I'm hoping we can have that. Volumetric fog also looks very pretty, so that's mainly it. And I think it gives like a really nice ambiance to the world. Uh, and rim lights is kind of the same thing. It just gives a really nice feeling to the world, I think. And this is like a separate thing, kind of, but it has more to do with like the production rather than the art style, which is that I want us to I want the art pipeline to be sort of hook-inable by modders so that they can add stuff. So on the low price side, yeah, it's not really that I want everything, as I think I said, to be like super high poly or anything, or high, like super high resolution textures. I think they can be pretty low res, really. or even low poly to some degree. It's more that it should look and feel like, you know, actual, you know, materials and objects rather than just a typical sort of low poly art style, right? Which I have some examples of later, I think. And another, which may be upsetting to hear, but I think this is it's kind of a weird game, right? Because we have a need to do so much, but we can only do not so much, right? And I think that might mean that it's better if we have a lot of content, even though all of that content isn't at the exact same level of quality, or even if the styles don't match perfectly, you know. It's better if we just have the content, and then over time we can, you know, smooth those things out, right, and replace the ones that stand out more, and so on. So this is just like this is low priority stuff, right? For like a AAA game, I think you really want everything to be like really super matching and feel like it's you know, all the same, one of the same, like, you know, yeah. But we have to. I think it's okay for us to cut back on that requirement, basically, which I think maybe artists won't like to hear me say, but that is what I think. Okay, so I have made a kind of artboard in here. This is a program called PureRef, which was recommended to me, and it's quite nice, I think. So I put some things in here. This could be like 10 times the size, probably, and probably will be when, you know, we get more effort done with it. But I wanted to just show some things to try to visualize what I'm thinking. So we can maybe start over here. So realistic proportions and angles. So if you look at this person's face, it looks like a real person's face, right? It could even be lower, you know, resolution than this. I would be fine with that, but I still like that the, you know, it looks like a normal person, right? Whereas this I don't like very much. This is from World of Warcraft, I think, or some sort of Warcraft. It's, you know, the beams are like kind of bent in weird ways, and the roof is like, you know, yeah. I mean, it's totally fine for World of Warcraft, but this is not the style that I'm after. Also, like, the beams are really huge, right? They're like, you know, massive things. All of these are like super big, which is also like a wow thing, right? Which I don't feel is maybe the right choice for us. Also, I mentioned like it's a blue roof, which, you know, I think that can be okay. But in WoW, it seems like there's just a lot of, you know, people have like endless amounts of paints of bucket that they can just pour over everything, and it's like freely handed out by the mayor or something. No, but it's just like, you know, maybe we can, you know, make like, you know, what would like a natural roof tile color be, right? Clay or something would be more orangey or brown or something. And here, this is really nice, I think, for the most part. This also has a blue roof, but maybe like in this case it's more okay, because this feels like a, you know, you're out wandering and you're coming to this, maybe kind of looks like an inn out in the wilderness, or like a, maybe as a like a wizard's house, and they've, I don't know, it feels like a more exquisite building, maybe. So maybe they've afforded this cool blue color. So in this case, maybe it would be okay. They have crystals just like lying around, which I think is kind of weird, but that's not to say that I don't want crystals in the game. I just maybe don't want them to be featured so weirdly prominently, right? But otherwise, this is a really nice painting. This one is one that I've shown before in the Discord. I think like these are, it's just a little bit too cartoony, right? So um, both the proportions and the whole sort of feeling of them, really not my style. We have this, which is, it's nice, but I think it's very chunky. This is from a strategy game, I think, so we totally makes sense. But for us, I think maybe it doesn't make so much sense. So one of the is the boat thing here, which I like, but for our game it would be like, well, we can't really have these type of unique assets because it's just too much content to have them, and you can't have like this in every village because then it's going to be like, does every village have a boat balcony? That's really strange, right? So yeah, so hero props like that is going to be really hard for us to do, I think. Unfortunately, but that's just sort of the way it is. Also, like the tiles, I'm not like a super fan of them. Like in regards to our game, because they're just super clunky and a little bit like, who lay these tiles? They look random, kind of. Here there aren't any tiles, and they are very sort of brightly orange in a way that seems like maybe. I don't know. I'm not like a super fan of this look for our game. Oops, wrong button. So here's maybe a good example of what I mean by when I say that it's okay to have like a realistic material, and quotes in the realistic or believable department. But this is from Morrowind, and I would be kind of fine with this. Well, I think this is probably like too uh, too low, but I think that's also due to like this is from Morrowind, so they didn't have like much shading, fancy stuff going on, right? So I think we can make that better, just put some nicer shading, I would think. Whereas this, I mean, this definitely looks nicer than this, but this is, I think, just the wrong style for our game. And I can be convinced, but I think it doesn't feel like this would be much more work than this. It's just like a different, it's not like there are too many more polygons or anything, and texturing doesn't seem like it would be. I don't know. This is more the style that I would go for, and I'm not just talking about like I'm not really talking about like the high poly muscles or anything like that. It's just like more about the materials, right? This is just looks like, yeah. By the way, googling Kentaur images brings up some stuff on the internet. Volumetric fog, yeah, I think it's obvious. I think how much it adds to the feeling. Lots of lights. Yes, things that move and point lights that you can see from like miles away. I think all of that will make a huge impact on the feeling of the game. Verticality. So I remember really liking this bit when I came to this place in Skyrim. It's called like the Valtheim Towers or something. And it just looks really nice. I think with like two towers on one side, either side of the river, and there's like a bridge that you can cross, and there's like archers standing. It's really nice, I think. And just like having these type of walkways, there are probably much better pictures that you can find, but yeah, this type of verticality would be really nice, I think. rim lights, all of these sort of highlights around the edges. It makes it, yeah, I really like how that looks. And there are more examples of this, like here, for example, with the counter and so on. I even noticed it yesterday, well, a couple of days ago when I was out walking in the real world, and I came up to like a staircase, and I couldn't see all of the stairs. Like I couldn't see the top of the stairs, but I could see the where they were because I guess they were slightly rounded, so I could see the sun on just the rim of the stairs, and that it just looked nice. Uh, and this is also to show colors. This is like yellowish, green, blue, orangey. It like this is not super vivid. It's a little bit muted, but it's still like strong colors, I think. Or maybe it is pretty saturated. It's just dark. I don't know. This is kind of nice. Like I've never seen forests like this, I think, in many video games, except maybe like Firewatch. So I like this. And realistic animations. Let's see if I can show this. I don't know. It's it's not exaggerated that much. It's just a normal face, right? That's doing things. I think if we can have this, that would be super nice. I'm not so much a fan of this type of idle animation. I mean, I get why they do it in various games and for pixel art and so on, but the thing where they like stand and do like this for for idling, it just bugs me for some reason. I just feel like no one ever stands like that, and it's just like it just looks really silly. Even though I totally also can understand the appeal of it, but yeah. Just one thing that it's very much a old pet peeve of mine. So in general, I think we need to aim for animation that is sort of code driven, physics driven, and data driven, rather than handmade. Just because it requires a lot of work, and it requires a lot of technical skill, and I just don't think it's feasible for us. And I think, yeah, I'm going to go into this a little bit later. So I think that was it for this one. So now I'm going to go back to the presentation. If I can find it. Yes, here we are. Okay, so now I think we get to the second part, which is how are we going to do this? And I have, one answer, or I'm going to try to answer this, and we'll see what everyone thinks of it. But I think we kind of have to come at this game from an angle of like we can't just develop it like a normal game, because it isn't a normal game, and especially it's not a normal game for a small team to make. And it's like, how on earth can a small team make a game like this? I haven't spent that much time on the presentation, so there is more to be said about this and lots of more things we can do, but this is just like a introduction to how I'm thinking about this stuff. Okay, so let's take like Village. This is an artist that I really like that made pixel art, and this is like an asset pack that you can buy from him. And so this is like this is his like village pack. So let's say that to make one village, we need, or to make a village basically, we need 100 models, roughly. And okay, but if we have 10 biomes and we want like each village, like a village in like a dwarven biome, to be different from a village in a forest biome, then we want then we need 1,000 models, right? And if we want them in different states, well, now we need 3,000 models. And if we want them to be, in different states of, overgrownness, then we need 9,000 models. And if we have 10 different races and cultures, then we are up to 9,000 models to make for, just the villages in the game. You could imagine even more properties. And clearly this, this doesn't work, right? Obviously this will never work. So, yes. So, what are the actual problems here? Well, I mean, yeah. So there's just a lot of work, right? You need a AAA army to even try to do something like this. And if you just want to do it and then you want to improve some of it, so you want to improve, let's just say a door, because I'm using doors later as well, then you also need to maybe improve the door that's in the forest biome that's damaged a bit and that is slightly overgrown, right? So it potentially means that you need to go around and fix 900 models. Obviously this is the naive approach, but basically. Okay, and disk space. This might be in the hundreds of gigabytes, which is not great, right? I mean, we could potentially this isn't necessarily a 100% deal breaker, but it would be painful, right? And just figuring out, there's a bug on the this and that model. I mean, it's just impossible, right? So yeah. So here are 2 ideas, or 3, I think, for how we could solve this. So we could just fuck it. I mean, we're gonna do Minecraft style, or block based, and we could do something like this, but I think it still wouldn't scale, right? Because you still need so many different resources and so many different things. I don't know. I just feel like this wouldn't work. And the same with low poly. It's just okay. Well, this would still need to look different for a elven forest village and a dwarven mountain village, right? So it still wouldn't scale well enough for our needs, I think. And do we have a choice? Do we just need to okay, well, I guess we just reduce the scope and we won't have all of that sort of detail. And elven villages will look exactly the same as dwarven villages, and that's just the reality that we have to live with. No, that's not good enough. Because if we're making an RPG, right, where you're supposed to be able to feel like you're walking around in a real world, it needs to feel different in different places. It needs to look different in different places. So yeah. Also, I just don't want this style from a purely artistic point of view, because it just looks like every other indie game out there, and it doesn't look like a world that I think I'm gonna get lost in. It just looks like this is the minimum amount of, it just looks like, well, they had to do it this way because there was no other way for them to make this game. And I don't think that's true. But yeah, we'll see. So how do we do this? Well, we need to limit the combinatorics, right? And we need to procedurally generate art. There's no way around this. This doesn't mean that we only procedurally generate art. We will still need, artists doing art. But to get the scale of this done, it really needs we really need to procedurally generate stuff. And how do we do this? Well, we flip the combinatorics on its head, and let's see what that means when we make a door. And here is some program art coming. Okay, so let's say that we have a door, but we just split it up into its sort of constituents, and then we have different, each constituent part can be slightly different, and then we can combine that into a door again. And okay, how many different doors can we make? So here we have 5 door shapes, we have 4 frames on the door, like ornaments here, elven ornaments, right? Speak, friend, and enter is what it says here. Different door handles and hinges on the door. And okay, so this gives us 180 doors, which is, not a lot, but also not terrible. And you could imagine that, like, this wouldn't be a lot of work necessarily, right? Because I think once you had like this, maybe with textures and so on, it wouldn't be that much work to just, copy it and change the model around a little bit. Okay, so we have 180 door combinations, but what if we have a system where in Blender, I guess, you could set like splines around the, or I guess bones, right, in the mesh, and then we can have a system that can randomize the bones, right? So randomize some values on the bones, and that will affect how the model looks. Okay, so if we can do this 4 times for all of these parts, then we have like 1 billion combinations suddenly. We can vary the material, so it can be like different, amounts of shiny, different, core base colors, or different materials entirely. And now we have, a lot of doors, right? And here's another thing we can do is, instead of like modeling the growth as like a separate models, we draw splines or bones or whatever you want to call them, and we tag them in some way that allows us to generate all of these doors in code instead, right? So we find all of these sort of tagged overgrowth, and somehow, problem to be solved later, we figure out how overgrowth will look on that door. Same way for the status modeling. If it's damaged, geometry nodes, or however we do it, right? We can generate automatically damaged buildings or damaged sort of meshes. We change some of the or Houdini change some of the vertices around, introduce new ones probably, and then all of a sudden, we have a whole lot of doors, and so what does this all mean? Well, this will need a lot of programming support because there's a lot of features to be done here, and we'll probably need more work per detail. So making a door will be a lot of work, and just a single door, compared to just doing a regular door, right? If you do a door from scratch. However, once you've made that door, you've now made all that you need to do in order to generate a silly amount of doors, right? And maybe it doesn't really even need to be that complicated to make a door, right? I'm not a modeler, but I would think that it doesn't need, like, it could even be simpler if the door shape, for example, is just like almost like a geometric shape rather than actually modeled or things like that. So there's millions of doors. There's just like a buzzword type of thing. What does it mean for us? Well, it means that every village can be slightly different, right? In this village, we can spawn a carpenter that likes ornaments, and that means that we bump up the ornament level on all of the doors one step, right? And that will make things feel different. And importantly, every door will fit its context. Just based on the specific spot that we're going to spawn the door in, it's going to look like it fits exactly there, right? And we can, we don't have to start out with all of these features. Probably just the first one is good enough, where we have like different parts and we can just combine them. But we can add more later. Someone can go in and just tweak rules, and when they do that, it'll just change the whole world in an instant, quote unquote. Artists still have a lot of control, is I think still true. It's just that you won't like be making 100 doors that will look, that you will make from the bottom of your heart, right? Instead, you will make parts of it or whatever. And we will get the quality level will be the same for all doors all across the world, which is nice, right? Even though that's a low priority goal, it's still something that this enables. Yeah, so when we add a rule or a feature to allow maybe making a door thick or something like that, then that's a type of rule that we can apply to any different type of object, right? This is very modding compatible, I think. Someone could just add like a new door shape, and then voila, we have a new door shape in the game, and they just need to tag it in ways that make it spawn in circumstances where it makes sense for that door type to spawn, right? And I think the more and more I think about it, I think this is a necessity that we need to do this at runtime, for various reasons, but this is a strong one, right? So basically, you enter a village, and like when you enter a village, like the first thing we can do is just spawn like the generic door everywhere, right? So it's the same door model, and then as you walk around the village, we can replace them, as we go along, with just like doors as we generate them in the background. And obviously, I'm just saying doors, but this goes for like everything in the village, right? I think this is reasonable to do, but it does mean that we can't do it in, for example, Houdini, probably. And if we do it in Blender, that means that we would kind of have to ship Blender with the game. So, I mean, I don't know, but I think this would probably be the right choice. And it feels like all of the rules that I described, it's not rocket science to do it. I think to generate meshes that can be like controlled in these ways. Okay, so let's move over to animations. So I think that handmade animations are too much work, and they are too rigid, and they require significant tech art skills to set up these sort of massive, animation graphs and all kinds of things. And you still need tech art for animation in a way you do it, I think, but I've just seen how it can go, and it's super hard if you don't have someone who is like an expert at animation. And I think for us, we won't have just humans, right? We will have humans and wolves and weird, fantasy creatures, and yeah. But there's a but here. I think it's good for bootstrapping, for getting us up and running, and it's totally okay to have like a dog that's hand animated, or a even an NPC that's hand animated, and we know that down the line we will move to something else. And that also means that it's fine if that looks quite Yankee for a good while until we upgrade it. And it's good for bot art. Hold up, bot art. Well, yeah, so this is also something that I think we might need to do to get up and running. Basically, is to just buy a bunch of content, and that will mean that it's going to be impossible to find content or art that just everything looks great together, right? It's going to be like a perfect fit artistically, but that's that's a lower priority goal for me than just actually having art in the game. It does mean that we can't release this art as open source, but I think that's fine. I think the more I think about it, the more I feel like we will have to make a game where the game is or the code can be open source, but a lot of the assets will be basically managed by us and built into like a bundle that we ship with the game, right? And that means that we can do things like this. It also unlocks, all kinds of other, content like music and other things. So procedural physics and driven animation is what I think we need to do, but I think maybe it's too much. It's too complicated to do. If I were to sit down and now I'm gonna make procedurally physics driven animation, it's just that's like a 2-year project to get it good, right? But it does seem like there is a lot of good middleware libraries, data sets coming out. It's like a really it's a big thing that's coming, right? So I think that in a year or two, this may be quite viable even for an indie team like that. This is also like one of those things where if we keep the some of the game not open source, then that unlocks a lot of stuff for us that we couldn't really do otherwise, and that's a trade-off that I am okay with. And yeah, I think like having this is the only way to reach my personal target quality. Like I really feel like hand animations, it's really a thing of the past where it's never going to look like an animation can look fine, but it's never going to look fine in the context of everything that's going on in the game, unless you have like master animators and master tech artists in your team. And even so, for all of these types of creatures, it's going to be just too hard. But until then, it's totally fine for us to use like hand animated creatures. Writing, I think what we will end up doing is handwrite a procedural dialogue generator. I'm open to the possibility, but I don't think that AI will be able to do that in a way that's that we can trust and that we can that actually has like a sort of quote unquote ethical data set behind it. So yeah, we'll see. And this basically means that we have to write probably like tens of thousands of dialogue lines and phrases and words that have tags and values associated with them, so that an NPC can say, "Hello, isn't the weather nice today?" or "Hello, come in from the rain," right, or something like that. Voiceovers, I really want voiceovers for a game like this, but obviously, like it's just going to be impossible to record these types of lines and have it sound good And this is a place where I think AI will work eventually. Right now, the quality isn't great. I think that's also one of these areas that's just having a lot of focus on it. So I think it will get a lot better a lot soon. And I think there are good data sets available, or that they're and that these will improve as well. So yeah, this is the only case where I think there is no other reasonable option for us, and I think this is actually a decent option. Um, so music. Uh, so yeah, I want us. I want a player to start the game and be like, start digging the menu music, just as you do in like Skyrim, or in a lot of like old Amiga games and so on. And like in game, we can have a bit more, classic backgroundy music, but we should have a good theme song. That's proper melody and stuff. Okay, I think that was the last slide. Yes, it was. So yeah, hopefully this was a shorter presentation than the last one. I think this was maybe 40 minutes or something. So maybe a little bit more palatable. So Giuseppe, do you have any questions? I think, or Julia, do you guys have any questions? I invite to speak. Okay, so I don't know if you are going to be. If you try talking now.
Hey,
Okay, yes, I think you will be in the recording. So,
perfect. Yeah, really thanks a lot for the presentation. It answers so many questions already. But I do have some thoughts on the procedural generation
uh-huh,
of art assets.
yes.
And I think, yeah, that's definitely the way to go. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit confused about how do you think we can still maintain artistic control, but then generate all the geometry at runtime in the game?
Um, oops. Let me go back to the slides here. uh, so, I mean, this is one example, I think, where, uh, you know, uh, uh, depending on how you set up these bones as an artist, you could get really varied results. And it's not like we're just gonna, randomize the values on these at start. We're gonna need to, like, my thinking is that the artist will be able to set some sort of influences or functions on these that'll uh, say what will happen. So, for example, it could be something like, well, if this node gets like a high value, like let's say from 0 to 1 and it gets a 1, then maybe in that case it creates this sort of spiral thing, you know. Uh, or we can have like a, the artist could always make like a, uh, ornaments that, uh, let's say that they make like a spirally ornament, and the sort of just the length and the width and all of that spiral ornament is like from code we just give it a value from 0 to 1, and depending, or maybe like two values or something, and in some way they can control like, well, if the detail value is 1, then or the bigger the detail value, the bigger uh, uh, these bones should be, or something like that. Or like in this case, you could have like windows, and the windows could have different shapes and so on. It's not going to be, they aren't going to have perfect control over the end asset, but they are going to have control over the individual parts, I think. Um, and yeah, uh, for me, I mean, the more control we can give them, the better. But I don't see a way where we can not do this, and that probably uh, that might mean that they will not have a lot of control. Like they won't have like the same degree of control as if they were just like, okay, I want you to model a door from scratch to completion, right? It's not going to be that kind of artistic control. Maybe we will have some assets that are more like that. I think that's quite possible. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So yeah, not as much control
Yeah.
as normal, but still, some control.
Okay, because I thought from this line in particular, I thought
Hmm.
it sounded a bit more like kit bashing, where I mean, the artist would produce a bunch of door handles, door hinges, right? And
Yeah,
they would just be put together by the runtime in game.
yeah.
But then when you mentioned the virtually no disk space, right, it sounded to me like even these assets, right, are generated in game from a set of
Oh
rules,
no no
right?
no. So
Okay,
like
okay,
what I'm showing here, these would be uh, made by artists completely.
perfect.
But
Okay,
I mean, this is like you know maybe we will have 1,000 of these in the
mm-hmm.
game, or maybe like 10,000 in total. That's still compared to what we would need, and then I mean 10,000 in total for the whole game for all the different objects and combinations and so on. So I think that's a huge step down from having like 90,000 doors, ninety
Yeah,
thousand for windows, 90,000. Yeah. Well, I guess it would. Yeah. Okay. Not quite like that, but yeah,
okay,
still.
cool. I think this is really cool, and I'm a bit looking forward to seeing the type of tools, right, and editors we would have to build, right,
Yes.
to support this. But yeah, I agree with you. That's the only way.
Yeah. And it's never going to be as uh, it's not going to have quite the same um, I think at least like probably like an asset in Skyrim would look maybe more cohesive because it's been like super made as a whole, right? And this will look a little bit more janky probably. I don't think there's like a way around that, but I think it'll be stronger in other ways, right? Because we really need this thing where Skyrim only has like one biome kind of, so they had it easy in that sense, right? But um, but we might have like 10 biomes and 10 different races, and we really want them to to look different. And I think this is the only real way we can do that. Any other thoughts or questions?
Nope.
No? Okay. Well, I guess that's the end of the presentation then. Thank you for listening, and let me
Thank you.
know
Thank you.
in the comments if you're on YouTube or anything like that. What do you think?